second Sunday of Advent, but it's also a special feast day in the calendar of the church. It is, in fact, the feast day of St. Nicholas. So I would like to pray his collect. It's on the inside cover of your program for today. Let us pray. Gracious God, send your Spirit upon us, that we may follow in the steps of St. Nicholas, loving you and generously caring for others. We ask this through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. So, tell me, what is another name for St. Nicholas?
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus, absolutely. In the beginning, there was St. Nicholas, and then later, St. Nicholas evolved into Santa Claus, or Sinterklauser in a Scandinavian language. So, St. Nicholas, before he was even a saint, he came from a really wealthy family, and they lived in Turkey. Is Turkey something you eat, or is it a nation? A nation, yeah, it's a nation. And in those days, in the Bible, they called Turkey Asia Minor. Okay, but now we call it Turkey. So St. Nicholas came from a really wealthy family. But then his town came to him and said, "We need a bishop. Will you be our bishop?" He was very reluctant to do that. But finally, he did in fact agree to become a bishop. So, what is this? It's a bishop's mitre, absolutely. So they put the bishop's mitre on. Well, this is a very, very large bishop's mitre, of course. Years ago, when I was newly ordained, our bishop came during the week to meet with a couple of clergy, and so I put this on his seat. Yeah, he really liked that, because his bishop, his mitre was not this large. However, in Asia Minor, those mitres didn't look quite like this. This is what they look like today in the Western Church. In those days, they were called Phrygian mitres. And they were the same, but they were like this. And they often had a pom-pom on them. Now, that's going to become really important in just a little while, okay? So this would have looked like something like he would have had as a bishop. Now, he really took the gospel to heart. He understood that it was his job, and the job of the clergy especially, to show forth Christ's compassion for everyone. Now, in his town, he heard that there was a family, and the mother had died, the father was extremely poor, and he had 3 daughters. Well, of course, as a woman in those days, you would have wanted to marry and leave your father's home, but in order to do that, Daddy had to pay what we call a bride's price. So when your daughter married, Daddy had to give the new husband something of value. Maybe it was money, maybe it was a flock of sheep or a couple of camels. Well, this father was too poor to do that. So he planned to do something really terrible. He planned, in fact, since he couldn't pay the bride price for his 3 daughters, to sell them into slavery. And that would have meant, of course, a life of unimaginable agony for his 3 daughters. Times were different then, and still, even though times were different and he was desperate, that still doesn't seem like to deliver these balls of gold coins, what does he do? He tosses them down the chimney and they land in their shoes and their stockings. What does that sound like? Yeah. It sounds like us with our Christmas stockings. And those balls of gold coins, like those glittery balls, we put on the Christmas tree. And so he did this. And guess what? He saved those women from a life of slavery, and they were able to bring into their marriages some level of wealth. So he becomes later the patron saint of brides. Now, St. Nicholas is pictured differently down through the ages and in different places in the world. So, some years ago, I picked up this Christmas ornament in Heidelberg, and here we have St. Nicholas. You can see this. He's riding a white horse, isn't he? And he has a Christmas tree and his bag of goodies, and he's got on his red outfit and his red hat. Now, we know how a bishop dresses in his coat and in his mitre. His coat and his mitre become the red outfit of who we think Santa Claus is today. And his bishop's mitre, in those days, remember I told you it was a Phrygian mitre, and it was flopped over? Well, that's the kind of hat Santa Claus wears, right? With a white pom-pom on the end. So Santa Claus transforms from being a religious figure, a bishop, into a more secular figure in the way that he dresses. But overseas, he is, in fact, pictured riding a white horse on Christmas Eve. Instead of, in this country, what do we say Santa Claus travels in? A sleigh with what? Tiny reindeer, yes. So we take the horse and we transform that into a sleigh with reindeer pulling it. And who pulls it? Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, right? Yeah, with the shiny nose, because it's a foggy night. So, I have some examples here of the way Santa Claus looked in previous ages. Here he is. He looks way more like a bishop here than our modern Santa Claus, and you can see his Phrygian mitre fallen over there. In this particular depiction, he's holding a ship, because one of the stories about him is that he's on his way to Rome, and one of the young sailors falls overboard and drowns. They fish him out of the sea, and St. Nicholas resurrects him. So that's one of the real miraculous stories about St. Nicholas. But then, of course, we have the more modern version of Santa Claus, where his bishop's clothes become the red clothes, and his cap and his bag of goodies and toys and a Christmas tree. So, when our forefathers and foremothers came to this country, we call them the Pilgrims. They didn't like Christmas. They didn't like any of this stuff. They said, Christmas trees, that's what pagans brought into the house. And we shouldn't be doing any of this stuff. So they really didn't celebrate Christmas like we do. But even if you believe in Santa Claus, just remember that Santa Claus is not really a secular figure. Santa Claus is a religious figure who shows forth the compassion and love that Christ shows each and every one of us. And so, Christmas should be about Silent Night. It shouldn't be about the secular anthems that encourage so much in these really desperate times. So, as we go through this Christmas season, remember St. Nicholas and all that he shows for us also to do. Amen.